Alright, what's happening guys? Bro80s here. The DLC has been out for just over 2 weeks now, and I haven't actually shared my thoughts on how Guardian seems to be holding up since the release. Has he gotten better? Has he gotten worse, or stayed the same? I'm going to be discussing that in today's video, and also showcasing a boss fight I had against the Dreglord, which I'd love to share. Before we get into the video, consider subscribing if you're into in-depth guides, memes, and watching an Australian man have a ramble about one of his favourite games. Also, you should totally join the Discord. I don't know man, that'd be sick. It's called The Flock, and I think that's pretty neat. Anyway guys, yes, today is all about Guardian and how he's been travelling since the release of the DLC. Right off the bat, I think his power really shines in this DLC for a lot of reasons that I'll get into. Mainly to do with the lack of chip damage from certain bosses, the guard counter openings, and yes, of course, the melee users got a nice buff in the form of weapon passives. Yes, there are now of course increased melee weapon attack power that you can find as a weapon passive. This was a much needed buff for martial users, mainly because their DPS couldn't keep up with magic users. That being said, now Recluse doesn't feel as special to me if people can just out DPS her by spamming L2 with the Balancer's Relic or these melee buffs. Recluse is only good at one thing, and that's DPS. Now that her department is being outshined by melee users who have more health and in some instances better abilities, why play her? But like, that's a video for another day I guess, I'm just rambling here. Lastly, his stat altering relic is in fact a regular relic now. You can buy this from the collector's signboard once you defeat the Dreglord, and my god, this relic is a godsend. I've said this relic is a staple in Deep of Night, but honestly, if you're able to accommodate for it in your regular loadout, I just say use it. He has higher strength and dex than Wilder, and if you can get used to his dodge, then you'll be laughing. Yes, you have less vigor, but it doesn't really matter, he still has a lot of vigor, man. If you look at Guardian running this relic like a Redditor, then you could say you'd be playing Wilder, but with a shitty dodge. That's, yeah, not really the case, but it also is. A character's whole identity isn't just their base stats. As we saw with Scholar, his base stats are kinda shit on paper, but him as a whole, including his character traits, he's such a strong Nightfarer. Guardian with this relic means that you have no reason to complain about his quote-unquote lack of damage, and if you still do, then you're honestly a bit of a wanker. Sorry to diagnose you with such, but it's just the way life can be sometimes, buddy boy. Now, as for how he's faring in the DLC, I won't really talk about the new POIs too much, but I will say that he can clear them out quite easily. Like, you've got some full of bosses that can be stun-locked in his Whirlwind, you've got some that get staggered when they hit your shield, and then you have the Divine Warriors. They're very scary if you don't know their moveset, and they can humble you if you're not careful. As for the night bosses, you've got some very friendly matchups for Guardian, and some that are bad. One that poses as a proper threat and is probably his worst matchup by far is Moog. This guy's Guardian's worst nightmare, and he's one boss I wish I could just switch characters for. But that being said, if you're good at dodging and if you get lucky enough with weapon passives, then you'll be fine, and you might have the potential to phase skip him like you see in this clip here. It's just that when he goes into his second phase, he can and will do a lot of chip damage and bleed buildup. That being said, if nobody on your team has the physics to counter the Lord of Blood's curse, then Guardian can hold his ultimate for the entirety of the phase transition so that nobody takes any damage. This is huge help and saves you and your team a lot of flasks. Next we have the Curse Blades and the Divine Beast Warrior. Guardian absolutely bullies the f*** out of the Curse Blade, like it's not even funny. It kinda is. Some runs I've taken him out in just 2 guard counters, so then I can focus entirely on the Divine Beast Warrior without getting stabbed in the back by 50 knives, and it's pitch black. Also, for the Divine Warrior, I already mentioned earlier that if you're not prepared for their unrelenting combos, then you might get destroyed. Otherwise, like yeah, he has plenty of guard counter openings if you know them. For the Demon Princes, they're half and half. Sometimes you can do fine against them, but other times you'll have both of them aggroed on you, so you might get knocked out of a guard counter by the other one, or you'll get dead angled. Other times their AI will be quite generous for you, and you can mess them up pretty good. The Knight 2 variant, honestly, aside from a few chips of damage, he's fine, man. For the Dreglord expedition, it's a bit half and half to be honest. Night 1 bosses are brain dead easy with Guardian, like the Death Knights, they get absolutely deleted, and the Red Bear just isn't much of a threat to the bird, man. Night 2, however, things change. Artorias can chip you to death, and can choose to end his combo whenever he wants, so this doesn't leave much room for guard counters as he can punish you whenever he wants. And the Dancing Lion is a weird boss, but as long as you're not fighting him in his elemental phases, then he's actually pretty chill. Now obviously, these are subject to change in Deep of Night. In Deep of Night, my general rule is that if something does chip damage, depending on the severity of the amount, I will just choose to dodge it instead. That being said, certain bosses like the Death Knights or the Divine Beast Warrior can be staggered or killed before they chip you out to a level that is threatening to your survivability, so just take it on a boss by boss basis. By the way guys, did you know that 100% of you aren't subscribed yet? Hit the subscribe button guys, it'll be worth it, I swear on my balls. Lastly, we have the Night Lords. Ooh yeah, these are a Guardian main's wet dream, if I'm being honest. Minimal chip damage, lots of guard counter openings, and his whirlwind shines in both fights. Finally, you can stun the balances with it, and you can also bully the ads that the Dreglord spawns in his fight. I really have nothing bad to say about these bosses for Guardian, other than his power diminishes a little bit for the Everdark variant of the balances due to blood loss buildup, but otherwise, he actually does so well against these bosses, it's insane. One last thing I wanted to mention before I move on is that I think Guardian can struggle with the new Forsaken Hollows map. Maybe it's just me, but mainly because unless you're playing solo, you might not be able to go to the mines to level up your shield. They're so far out of the way, and most teams I've played with have just wanted to focus on POIs and finding the crystals, and by the time the first circle starts closing, the mines have already been engulfed by the rain, which is a bummer. Well, overall, since the release of the DLC, Guardian has proven to be one of the stronger Nightfarers to have on your team, and now I'm really not going to take anybody seriously when they complain about Guardian not doing enough damage, or that he's just straight up bad. Those statements may have been believable once, but not so much anymore. I know I'm your resident Guardian Glazer, but it's hard to find bad things to say about him when he's actually in a pretty good spot right now. And for the fact that I'd rather have positive things to say instead of sitting here complaining about him the whole time. Like, that wouldn't be fun for anyone. Anyway guys, to let my statements speak for themselves, I'll close off the video with a really good run that I had against the Dreglord, aka Greg. You'll see what I mean by just how cruisy this fight is for Guardian, and yes, it does feature a Meatball Deflection, which I lost my mind over. I didn't record my voice because I had my girlfriend next to me watching and cheering me on, so with all that said, here is Guardian versus Dreglord. I hope you guys enjoy.